10 science and history facts that sound completely fake. But every single one of them is true. How many would you already know? Let's count them down. Almost every atom in your body was born inside an exploding star. The iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, none of it started on Earth. Right after the Big Bang, the universe was almost only hydrogen and helium. No carbon, no oxygen, no you. Stars are furnaces. They fuse light atoms into heavier ones, carbon, oxygen, even iron. When a giant star dies, it explodes as a supernova and blasts those elements across the galaxy. That stardust drifts, clumps together, and builds new planets, and eventually living things. The calcium in your teeth, the iron in your blood, it's literally the ash of dead stars. So you're not just looking at the universe, you are the universe looking at itself. Archaeologists opened a 3,000-year-old Egyptian tomb and found a jar of honey that was still perfectly edible. Almost every food on Earth rots, honey doesn't, here's why. Honey is barely 17% water, far too dry for bacteria to survive. It literally pulls the moisture out of any microbe that lands in it. It's also acidic, around pH 4, a hostile environment where almost nothing can grow. And bees add an enzyme that slowly releases hydrogen peroxide, the same stuff you clean wounds with. Dry, acidic, and antiseptic, bees invented the perfect preservative millions of years before the fridge. That's why ancient Egyptians embalmed their dead with honey, and why the jar in your cupboard could outlive you. You picture Napoleon as a tiny, furious little man, stomping around in an enormous hat. He wasn't. Napoleon stood about 5'7" average, and even a little tall for a Frenchman of his day. So where did the myth of the short emperor actually come from? 2 mistakes and 1 very good insult. It began at his autopsy, where a French doctor recorded his height as 5'2". But that was measured in old French units, and the French inch was noticeably longer than the English one. Convert it properly, and 5'2" French becomes a perfectly ordinary 5'7". His nickname didn't help. Le Petit Caporal, the Little Corporal, a term of affection from his soldiers, not a jab at his height. The real damage came from across the channel, where cartoonist James Gillray drew him, over and over, as a pint-sized tyrant throwing tantrums. Gillray even gave him a mocking nickname that stuck for 2 centuries, Little Boney. It worked so well it inspired a psychology term, the Napoleon complex, named after a man who was never actually short. 200 years later, a perfectly average emperor is still the most famous short king in history. Cleopatra lived closer to the launch of the iPhone than to the building of the Great Pyramid. It sounds fake, so let's actually do the math. The Great Pyramid was finished around 2500 BC, back when woolly mammoths still walked the earth. Cleopatra was born in 69 BC, about 24 centuries after the builders went home. The first iPhone launched in 2007, barely 21 centuries after her death. So to Cleopatra, the pyramids were already unimaginably ancient. In fact, they were older to her than she is to us. By her reign, tourists had been scratching graffiti into their stones for 1,000 years. Ancient Egypt simply lasted that long, 30 dynasties, 3,000 years of pharaohs. The most famous queen of ancient Egypt was, by Egyptian standards, practically modern. 1 teaspoon of a neutron star weighs about 1 billion tons. That's nearly 3,000 Empire State Buildings, balanced on a spoon. And the weight isn't even the weirdest part. When a giant star runs out of fuel, gravity crushes a core heavier than our sun into a ball the size of a city. Under that pressure, atoms themselves give up. Electrons are squeezed into protons, until almost nothing remains but pure neutrons. No empty space, no fluff, just matter packed wall to wall. The whole star can spin hundreds of times every second. And its gravity is so fierce that a falling marshmallow would hit like an atomic bomb. So next time a spoonful of sugar feels heavy, remember, which one broke your brain, the skyscrapers or the marshmallow? An octopus has 3 hearts, 9 brains, and blue blood. But here's the strangest part, its main heart stops beating every time it swims. The other 2 just pump blood through the gills. That's why octopuses would rather crawl, swimming literally exhausts them. The blue blood is no metaphor either. Instead of iron, it uses copper to carry oxygen, and copper turns it blue. That works far better in the cold, dark deep than our red blood ever could. Then there are the 9 brains, 1 in the head and 1 in each of the 8 arms. Every arm can taste, touch, and decide on its own, even after it's been severed. 3 hearts, blue blood, a mind in every limb, which fact freaks you out most. This metal is solid in your drawer, but melts in your bare hand. It's called gallium, and it melts at just 86 degrees Fahrenheit, cooler than your own body. It looks almost exactly like aluminium, but your palm alone is hot enough to destroy it. So hold a lump in your hand, and within minutes it starts to slump and puddle. And unlike mercury, it isn't even toxic. You can literally play with liquid metal. And yet gallium isn't some exotic lab curiosity. It sits quietly inside almost every smartphone and lead on Earth. The blue light that lit the modern worlds came from a gallium compound. Melt it, cool it, and it snaps right back to solid, completely reusable. A metal you can melt with a handshake, hiding in the very screen you're watching this on. Would you dare hold it? The sunlight warming your face right now left the sun's core about 100,000 years ago. From the surface to Earth, light takes just 8 minutes, but getting out of the sun, that's the insane part. It was trapped inside for an almost unimaginable journey. Energy is born in the core, where hydrogen fuses into helium. That energy starts as a photon, trying to escape a wall of dense plasma. It can only travel a hair's width before smashing into a particle and bouncing off. It zigzags randomly, absorbed and re-emitted countless times, barely crawling outward. This random walk can take tens of thousands of years to reach the surface. So the light you see began its life before the last ice age ended. You have never seen the sun as it is now, only as it was. So is it even still burning right now? The world's oldest written complaint is about a bad copper delivery, and it's 3,800 years old. In Babylon, around 1750 BC, one customer got scammed so badly that his rage outlived the entire empire. A merchant named Nani was furious with a supplier called ea-nasir. Nani had sent his servant with silver to buy high-grade copper ingots. But what arrived was junk, and ea-nasir was rude about it too. So Nani carved his fury into clay, the ancient version of a 1-star review. He accuses ea-nasir of insulting his messenger and treating him with contempt. Archaeologists later dug up ea-nasir's house and found even more complaint tablets. It turns out he had a long history of scamming his customers. Almost 4,000 years later, ea-nasir is still getting 1-star reviews. Would you have let the bad copper slide? Sharks are older than trees, much older. Sharks have been swimming the oceans for around 450 million years. The first true trees didn't appear on land until about 350 million years ago. That's a 100 million year head start for the sharks. When sharks first evolved, land plants were barely more than tiny moss. Sharks are also older than Saturn's rings and older than the North Star. They've survived all 5 of Earth's great mass extinctions. The event that wiped out the dinosaurs, sharks swam right through it. Their design was so effective it barely needed to change for hundreds of millions of years. So the next time a shark looks ancient and alien, remember, it watched the first forests grow.